Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I got a doozy for you today. I'm kind of making this video off the cuff. Felt like it was really important to get this video out. I have a lot to go over. This video is probably going to be on the longer side, so there will be chapters. If you can't get through it all, you can always come back later. Don't feel obligated to watch the whole thing. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name's Jesse. Welcome to my channel, where all I talk about and show people is domain format. If you don't know what that is, I have a handy how to play video you can check out there. And if you're new and just got done watching that video, this video is for you. I wanted to make a video that could, in one go, easily catch people up with everything that they would need to know about domain format to hopefully try and start playing themselves. There happens to be quite a bump in traffic because just recently, over the last weekend, I got to hang out with Paul from Team APS. It was really exciting. It was very short notice, impromptu, and we just decided to hang out, and I was so excited to be able to hang out with Paul, and we played a game. I think he had a good time. He won. He played Cyber Dragons, and we got to cover so much and talk about so many things. I wish we had more time to hang out, to be honest, but I'm definitely glad we did get to hang out. Hopefully he'll tell you guys about it himself, about his experience and all that stuff and what he thinks about it. After sharing that picture with everybody, there's been a lot of traffic coming to the domain Discord, and there's been some people asking great questions. I love seeing people interested in the format. All those questions made me realize that I should just make a video where I can go into length and detail about things that I want to go into and tell people to help catch them up to speed. Because there's a lot of differences between advanced and domain, obviously. A lot of these things aren't apparent until you've played. I would like people to know about these things before they try and play so they don't get frustrated. So, first off, I'm gonna give a little bit of lore for domain. I did not make domain. This is a common misconception. I just happen to be the first person to start making domain content. So most of the people who know about domain know my face, and they're kind of tied together. But it was actually made by a fellow named Michael. He goes by Divinity King on Discord, and Josiah, who goes by Jeeps Crisp on Discord. They made it around in 2020. They've been working on it ever since. More so Michael in the last couple of years, but he's stuck it through the entire time, and he's just now reaping the benefits of his labor. So I randomly made my channel without knowing what domain format was, because I was thinking that there should be a 4-player free-for-all format, and Michael found me, got me to join the Discord, and that was that. I was so excited because I didn't want to be the guy running a format. Michael's very good at it. Runs a great Discord, and he's doing a lot of work. He does so much work. People don't even understand. So I was happy to just make content and show the format off to other people. I've recorded games. So that's the extent of my contributions. The other fellow in this picture is Grayson. He's been playing since the beginning, since its inception as well, just so you know. And like I said, after sharing this picture, a lot of people ended up catching wind, and they're checking out the Discord and my channel. So this video is for those new people and anybody else who happens to have watched my how to play video. I'm going to give you some insights that can hopefully help catch you up to speed to those differences, get you comfortable trying to build a deck and join a game. Obviously, the first thing that happens is people hear about the format and they start thinking about what they want to build, what they want to try in domain format. Now, most people, when they're building an advanced list, they would take all their archetype engine cards, right? And then add non-engine until their deck's filled up, right? Now, you can do this, but because hand traps are so much less prevalent in domain, things like you're not going to be cross-out designator-ing a Ash Blossom. You're more likely to be cross-out designator-ing calling like Dark Bolt or something like that. A lot of the times the answer of what should I play comes down to what you're trying to play and how you're trying to play the deck. But that's not a very useful thing to tell somebody who's trying to find answers to what to play, right? So I don't want to go into specifics about what to play in a specific deck, but I can tell you what makes domain different from advanced and what types of cards get better because of those differences. Hopefully that's helpful to a lot of the people coming into the Discord and trying to play. A good place to start is picking a Deckmaster for the deck that you're trying to play. And you should know that there's 4 major categories that Deckmasters fill that I've seen playing. The first one is a starter. Stratos is an example. You can normal summon it, and it searches for a hero card, and you can start making your hero plays off of that, right? The second type is some sort of boss monster. Because you can always return your Deckmaster to the Deckmaster zone, you can kind of present a threat that's recurrent, that just can't go away. They can't get rid of it. The third category that I see most common is a monster that has a wide domain. What I mean by that is typically when you think of something like Stratos, for example, it has an attribute, an archetype, and a monster type. There's generally 3 things that are involved with a domain. there are some monsters with even more things included in their domain. So for instance, Elysium mentions all monster attributes. Therefore, you could play literally any monster in your deck if Elysium was your Deckmaster. And for that reason, Elysium's a very popular Deckmaster. And then the fourth category is just a funny Deckmaster. This can be something that causes chaos and makes things wacky for players. And then there's also things like, a group hug type strategy, or just something that's different. It doesn't have to be good. It's just you're trying to do something and that Deckmaster fills that role. All of these are fine. You can pick any one of these. I think the safest bet, to be completely honest, is something like the Stratos type Deckmaster. You can normal summon it and it starts your plays. So if you open up a brick hand, it can hopefully unbrick you and you can be involved in the game from the get-go. I would say when you get a little bit better at understanding the format and the type of decks that you like to play, maybe then you can try moving on to a boss monster or like a wide domain to try and fit a lot of different engines together. That's just my opinion though. You can do whatever you like. Now, let's say you have picked a Deckmaster and you want to start building your deck. Typically, most people think when playing a game, they want to build the biggest, best board possible so that you can wrestle your one opponent into submission and take them out on your following turn. This, in my opinion, is not the best way to go about playing domain format, because people do not understand how difficult it is to wrestle 3 opponents into submission. They have 15 cards to your opening 6. It's not that easy. Typically, from my experience, whoever can keep the most gas coming, a better longevity plan, keep cards in rotation, recycle their resources, can apply the most pressure later in the game, those people typically do better. That's typically a better strategy from my experience. It doesn't guarantee you can win because, again, the 3 opponents you have can just pool their resources and decide to take you out. So there's no guarantee about what's going to win. But in my opinion, like I said, whoever has the better long plan, long game, grind game, those type of strategies typically do better. And to kind of give an example of why building a big crazy board can typically just get you taken out, it can turn into an arch enemy game. It can get all 3 of your opponents to decide to just pool their resources and target you. I have a game with a Tier Limits player starting off with Painful Choice. Painful Choice is a crazy card. It's extra crazy in Tier Limits. So all 3 of the opponents in that game recognized that and all decided that, hey, we should stop what's going on here. And they did end up losing. I also have another game where somebody's playing like a Sprite Frog type of deck and they get a very strong controlling board turn 1. They have access to 3 negates plus other stuff. And quite literally for 3 turn rotations, I think, at least 2 full turn rotations, he's just able to completely stop anything we're doing. But because we're all deciding to pool our resources and focus him, eventually we break through and eventually he does get taken out. So how can you get an advantage? I want to go over some aspects that can help you better understand, all these things that I'm talking about and help you feel like you can create a better game plan on how to win a multiplayer, domain format game. The first thing you've got to do is kind of change your perspective on card advantage and card economy. So for example, in a 1v1 game, Pot of Greed is obviously really, really good. It is a +1. You gain 1 card off after activating it. After activating it, you now have more resources than your opponent who has 5 cards in their hand. It's very, very good 1v1. In Domain, it's still very good. I still play it in almost all my decks. Gives you access to more cards. It doesn't have any restrictions. You can play it multiple times in the same turn. It's obviously a good card. I'm not saying it's bad, but when you consider you'll open up to 6 cards, you kind of have to think of all 3 of your opponents, because at any time they could pool their resources to team up on you. There's 15 cards you're opening up against. So activating Pot of Greed you're still +1 because you still gain a card, but that card increase against 15 cards is much smaller than your +1 against the 5 cards of your single opponent in an advanced game. So again, I'm not saying Pot of Greed is bad. I'm just saying you have to kind of think of that when thinking about how to get card advantage in a domain game. For the same reason, something like Delinquent Duo is not as good in Domain. A lot of people get the idea that I can play Delinquent Duo on turn 1, the card's so broken, it's gonna ruin someone's day. So Delinquent Duo is still a +1 in 1v1 because they lose 2 and you only lose 1 card. In Domain format, Delinquent Duo is particularly bad because let's say you're turn 1 and you just shotgun Delinquent Duo, player 4, because they're gonna get the first battle phase. You technically gained card advantage over player 4, but again, if you consider the whole table, player 2 and player 3, they got a +3 for free because player 1 lost a card and player 4 lost 2 cards and player 2 and 3 didn't lose any cards. They They basically, for free, got to take out cards from their opponent's card pools. It's not the same as 1v1. It's not as good. And the other players have a free reason to just target you, the Delinquent Duo player. You obviously, you can play Delinquent Duo if you would like. Just understand that it's going to get people to target you if you just shotgun at turn 1. Obviously, it's pretty good later in the game if you can, you know, activate it on somebody who only has 2 cards in hand. It's it's pretty backbreaking, to be honest. It's happened to me. And really quick, one more thing before I continue talking about card advantage. When you go into a domain game, you have to keep in mind that you only have you know, all things equal, you have a 25% chance of winning. That's if everybody has an exact same chance of winning. So you are fighting an uphill battle. It's very difficult to out card resource 3 opponents each and every single game. So I just want you to kind of keep that in mind as I continue to talk about ways that you actually can get card advantage over your opponents. Okay, so I did talk about Pot of Greed and Delinquent Duo, which are kind of like instant card advantage cards. You activate them once, you get a bit of card advantage, and then you move on, right? Well, there's actually a lot of really popular cards in domain format that give you card advantage over time, because you have to take in consideration that there's now 4 turns in a rotation, and things that say once per turn can be activated 2 more times before it gets back to your turn. Now, it's hard to say what exactly is good card advantage over time for every single deck, but I'll give you some popular considerations here. Something like Supply Squad. Very good in something that can destroy, even if you can't destroy your own cards each turn, there's a high chance that it could happen in a 4-player game. So just playing it down and then playing normally, you'll most likely draw 2 cards at the very least. But if you're able to play it and use it that turn and guarantee that you can use it every single turn, for instance, something like Unchained could very easily activate Supply Squad each turn, right? Would I shove Supply Squad in every single deck? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I would take into consideration what I was playing. Another example of a oddly strange good card advantage over time card is Pinpoint Landing. If you're playing Dragon Maids, you're going to be able to activate this every single battle phase. It's not going to be hard at all. If you are able to activate something like Supply Squad, Pinpoint Landing, or Backup Squad every single turn, that's a plus. That's, you know, you're drawing 4 cards for the 1. That's like a double Pot of Greed. This is why when people say like, oh, Pot of Greed's just the best draw card, right? I'm like, actually, there's other ways to get card advantage, and these are just some examples. I would highly recommend checking out deck lists on YGO Pro Deck.com. We have a domain deck tag, so you can look at just domain lists. There's also domain lists inside the domain Discord. Another way to continuously get card advantage is most archetypes have a very common line of play. So I'm going to use an example. Okay, so this is a deck that I've been having a lot of fun playing. It uses a lot of new cards. I should say modern cards. I've been playing Big Wing Baphomet as my Deckmaster because I really like the Chimera Illusion archetype. Well, it's not really an archetype, but you know what I mean. A common line of play with this guy is he plus 1s on his own. He searches for a level 4 beast and the Chimera Fusion. And when he's used his fusion material, he can bring back an illusion from the graveyard to play. Now, the normal line of play is to go get Gazelle, the new Gazelle, right? So these are obviously the 2 cards I would go get after playing my Deckmaster. After I use Gazelle and Chimera Fusion and return Chimera Fusion back to my hand to use it again, both of these cards will be in the graveyard, and my Big Wing Baphomet won't really do much if I play it again. But, well, actually, he can still search for other level 4 beasts. The point I'm trying to make is, if I'm able to put this Gazelle and Chimera Fusion back into my deck somehow, the next time I play Big Wing Baphomet, I will be able to activate him again and get more cards to my hand, even though they're the same cards, right? This allows me to go through the same line of play with the same Deckmaster and the same cards. We refer to this as, you know, recycling your resources. And recycling your resources is very good for almost every single deck you could possibly play in domain format. And it's kind of a way to play multiples, right? Because obviously the format is singleton, but if you're able to search the same cards over and over again, it's kind of like you're playing copies of them, right? All right, with recycling in mind, I'm gonna show you some cards that I play very frequently in a lot of decks because they're pretty good at doing what I'm talking about here. I'm just gonna put them up on screen rather than try and show you them through my crappy webcam. Pot of Avarice, All-Star in domain format. Conversely, Jar of Avarice. Even though you draw 1 less card, it's still very, very good to play because you can shuffle any cards back into your deck, not just monsters. Even things like Pot of Benevolence and Migration Prophecy, I still like to play those cards a lot. This is probably my most recent favorite card to do recycling, and the card wasn't designed to be recycling, but it does it so well that I have to mention it. Slash Draw. Probably don't know exactly what this card does, but half of the text doesn't matter because you're never gonna deal damage with slash draw, but it does two things. It can get a brick out of your hand back into your deck, and it can also shuffle any amount of cards in your graveyard back into your deck equal to the number of cards an opponent controls. So you discard a card, and a lot of times I'm discarding a brick or something that I want back into my deck. I'm then milling cards, which can trigger a plethora of card and effects, and then I can choose the number of cards I milled. It doesn't have to be the cards I milled, just a number of cards equal to the number of cards I milled back into my deck. So this card, I love this card. This is more of a staple than Pot of Greed in my opinion. And then there's also ways to shuffle back like banish cards, because obviously a lot of things banish themselves for effect. To continue my Baphomet example, there's Cornfield Coatl and Mirror Sword Knight, plus the two fusions that banish themselves, like Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts, Baphomet, the Mythical King of Phantom Beasts. In this list, I'm very incentivized to shuffle back banish cards or get banish cards back into my resource loop. So some ways I do that is Burial from a Different Dimension. That can put monsters back into my graveyard to activate those effects again. Or another Pot of Acquisitiveness. I particularly like this one a lot too, because it can be used on opponents' banish cards to try and interrupt their plays. Another way to get advantage while you're trying to do this uphill battle is to just let your opponents fight. Let them fight amongst themselves. Try and stay out of the heat, stay out of people's targets, crosshairs or whatever. Like that example I told you about, if somebody delinquent duos another player, if you're not involved, if you're not the one who played delinquent duo, and you're not the one who got delinquent duoed, you're getting tons of free advantage by just letting it happen. And then you can also use the aggression from the first player to target them for kind of free. You know, you can say, oh, you played delinquent duo on that guy, I gotta stop you, or whatever. There's lots of scenarios like that happen. Because of this is another way I kind of try and mitigate my losses. I won't go all in on turn one, because you have a 75% chance of not getting the first battle phase. So I won't commit too many things to the board, because other people are going to play stuff, and then there's going to be a certain number of battle phases before I get my turn again. And those opponents can use their battle phase to attack my things and get rid of my resources. So very often I will not commit 100% of my stuff to my turn one board, because Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, battle phases to attack with, those things all will happen before you get your next turn. So if you can hold back your resources, let your opponents play their first turn, you know, destroys, pops, banishes, bounces. Let them target each other's things other than your stuff. This is another way to get free card advantage and help with that uphill battle. In addition to that, knowing when to apply your resources, when to go in, when to try and take somebody out is kind of huge as well, because you have to respect face downs in the spell trap zone. You just have to. Those type of things come with threat assessment. Typically, what will happen is whoever gets in the lead, the other three players will just kind of agree, like, hey, we should take this guy down a notch, otherwise he's going to get out of hand and take us all out. Whoever happens to be in the lead changes almost turn to turn. You know, there's typically not one person dominating the game from the start or for multiple turn phases. That's just not a very common thing. You know, player 2 will get out of hand, so player 3 and 4 will take him out, but then after the dust settles, player 4 is in the lead, so player 1 and 2 try and maybe think about stuff to do. Threat assessment is huge. If you just target somebody because they're an easy target, that also gets people, you know, puts a sour taste in their mouth, like, oh man, this guy's down, and you're just trying to take him out because you can. It's actually much better to keep them around so that you can hopefully encourage them to use their resources to help you with your own goals against whoever else is a threat. So those are some things to keep in mind when letting people fight amongst themselves and threat assessment and stuff like that. Now, let's say you do decide to hold back on turn one and you're not going to commit 100% to the board. You might have multiple battle phases that you have to survive through. And then definitely after the first round, you will have 3 battle phases that you have to survive through. There are some cards that can help you survive, like something simple as like Negate Attack. It just ends the battle phase and you can move on. While that's good at protecting you for 1 turn, that's not very good at protecting you for 3 battle phases. There are some cards that do this better and might be worth your consideration to not get, you know, the chance of having 3 people decide to gang up on you because you're in the lead and then take you out. Mirror Force is definitely an upgrade to something like Negate Attack because it can protect you for the turn and hopefully take out some of their resources in the meantime. It can also be used as a political card. If player 1 attacks player 2, player 3 can Mirror Force player 1. So keep that in mind. Mirror Force is definitely an upgrade to something like Wabaku or Negate Attack. But in my opinion, things that can be used multiple times or once per turn are much better. Some examples: Scrap Iron Scarecrow. It's not the best at defending you, but it can be used every single turn. It sticks around, and for that, I would much prefer something like that over something like Negate Attack. Titanocider, great card. I love this card. It is negate, reduces the attack of an extra deck monster, and it can set itself on the next turn. So you can set it on your turn, activate it on the next player's turn, set it on the third player's turn, activate it on the fourth player's turn. It's always going to be in the cycle, and you're always going to be very happy that it's around. But these next cards I want to talk about are quite good at defending you for a long period of time over many turns. Scrubbed Raid. This card's pretty good. Unfortunately, I think it's only ever had one printing, so it's kind of expensive, but it is so good for domain format. You have no idea. I played it in my zombie deck because Doom King Ballardrock was a very popular boss monster that I played, and it keeps coming back every single standby. So you can use Scrubbed Raid every single battle phase. There's many other archetypes that Scrubbed Raid's very good in, and not very many that I think it's bad in. At the very least, in a deck that can't utilize it as well as Ballardrock, you can at least activate it probably more than once. And then there's some very funny cards that make combat or the battle phase very annoying to get through. Things like Chicken Game can protect the person who has the lowest amount of life, and it lets everybody draw cards, and it's very fun and interactive and wacky. Ordeal of a Traveler activates every time something attacks, and it can possibly bounce it to their hand. Fairy Box can reduce the attack to 0, and Dark Sanctuary has a 50% chance to negate the attack and burn them for some amount. And the field spells can be played at instant speed with something like Metaverse, or you can just preemptively activate it after terraforming or whatever. Field spells are very good in Domain, and there's a lot of very interesting ones that you can play. Because you start at 8,000 life points in Domain, for anybody wondering, there was testing from Michael and Josiah with more life points, and games just took too long. That's a very surprising thing to hear from most people, but it's very true. Games already last long enough, trust me, but you do start at 8,000 life points, and another way to survive more of those battle phases, help keep you in the game longer, is actually life gain. Obviously, life gain alone can't win you the game, but if you can outlive the other two opponents that are in the game, you can hopefully increase your chances of landing in a 1v1 situation, which is much more preferable to, trying to out card advantage and outlive 3 opponents. So it can help you live through more battle phases. Since you're hopefully going to live longer, you'll draw more cards, and you could also play your Deckmaster more times. Some really good life gain cards. I would definitely say Child's Play is in the top the top most played life gain cards. It's very good. Surprisingly enough, Gingerbread House can be removal and life gain that can activate each turn. It's a surprisingly obnoxious card for your opponents. Spell Absorption, Soul Absorption, these cards can gain you a ton of life. This is a surprising fact for most people to hear. They think life gain's terrible, but it's heavily played. A lot of people play a lot of life gain cards to try and stay in the game longer than their other opponents. Conversely, direct damage or burn is also quite good. Over the course of the game, most people will attack whoever has like the lead or the most life points to try and bring everybody down at the same. There comes a common point in a game where a lot of people are down to 3,000 or less life points, and things can get pretty scary at that point because of very popular burn cards. A couple, just to name a few: Cauldron of the Old Man. Surprisingly, you play it, you gain some life with it at first, you don't appear too threatening with it, but then when somebody's at 2,000 life points and you have enough counters on that thing to take them out, it becomes very scary. There's just so many cards that can do so much damage, like Ceasefire, Ring of Destruction, stuff like that. Don't be surprised if you end up seeing some burn in Domain. One last reason why burn is quite good is because if your opponent's down to that low of life points, then it doesn't really matter what they have in play. You don't have to get through their field. You can just burn them out, and then the game continues on with one less person. For that reason, burn's pretty popular. So we've learned about how to hopefully stay in the game longer, how to keep the cards coming, keep the gas going, but there's actually some pretty popular boss monsters that are played a lot more than other ones. And there's a specific reason why. Typically people think of, like, on big scary end boards, they think of like a board full of negates, like Baron, Dissipator, stuff like that. But these cards I'm about to mention are actually a lot more popular than those other ones for reasons that I'll tell you about. Things that can activate each turn are obviously really, really good, like Hydralander. It's very popular. It's a really good card. It mills your cards, it pops cards, it's very easy to summon. The restriction is negligible because we play Singleton. A very popular boss monster is DPE, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. This card's pretty bonkers because you can activate it every single turn, popping itself and one card your opponent controls, and then it comes back. This with Supply Squad goes pretty hard, just so you know. Psychic End Punisher is also a very popular Towers card. It can become unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. It's very hard to get around. It has an effect that activates each battle phase to gain a huge amount of attack equal to the difference of your life points and your opponent, and that attack buff sticks and activates again on the next battle phase. Even if you're not the one initiating the battle phase or being attacked, it just activates every battle phase. So it just gets huge. And it's a Towers, and can take people out in one swing. Obviously, Dragoon is very popular. He's really hard to deal with. He allows for some control. He's a big body. He's also very popular. There's nothing else to say. And then monsters that have this specific line of something like Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. He says during the battle phase, he can make an attack on each of your opponent's monsters, something like that. Well, that's a continuous effect, and continuous effects are applied to each opponent. So this allows you to attack each monster your opponent controls for each opponent you have. It's very good at just clearing the board with one card, if they don't stop you, obviously. So monsters that say that are quite popular in Domain format. Board breakers are still obviously very good in Domain. You do want to be able to get through a board when they do decide to build one. One type of board breaker that gets much better, in my opinion, in Domain are kaijus. I try and, whatever attributes I have access to or monster types I have access to, I try and play a kaiju for those types just as an auto include. It helps you get around those boss monsters that I talked about that are towers. And I'm never sad to draw a kaiju. I just never am. But there's other things too, like, Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, those type of things. Those are all still good in Domain. I have some lists that I'll put in the description down below. I have a list of 60 board breakers, 60 hand traps, and 60 cards that I considered staples when I made that list. They're kind of old. I should probably update them, but those will be down in the description for people to see. Now, this last aspect I'm going to talk about is kind of a personal preference, because you only get so many chances to commit to a board and set up a good board. I personally think that it's also worthwhile to play anti-board breakers. I'll give some examples of what I mean. Because things like Dark Hole and Heavy Storm and all those types of things are very popular in the format, I kind of build my decks with the expectation that one of my opponents will get one of those types of cards most likely throughout the game. So some funny ones are things like Waking the Dragon. Waking the Dragon has a very high chance of being able to activate. To stop your opponent from breaking your board, these are some cards that I like to play. So if you want to protect your set cards, your back row, Lord of the Heavenly Prison is good for that. Starlight Road, if you can have access to Stardust Dragon, is very good for the same reason. Dark Sacrifice can help protect your board. And I have a branded deck, and all the time I use the protection from Branded Opening and Decisive Battle of Golconda. That card's great because it protects my board and it helps keep me going and activate the extra deck monsters. Okay, those are all the major things that I would tell people to help them get them caught up to speed. But the last thing I would tell them is that there are a lot of cards, and this is the part where it gets fun. Finding cards that become really interesting or much better in Domain because there's 4 players and because you have so much more time to play the game. You get a lot more turns on average, in my opinion, than something like Advanced. So you have a lot more time to do, funny things. I'll give an example of some of those things I'm talking about. Gift Exchange is hilarious. It is so funny to do in Domain. It's a very political card. You can agree to, you can talk about it before you activate it to kind of get an idea of what people think, or what card you think you're going to get versus what you're going to give away. Top Share can kind of do Gift Exchange, but with one person. That can also be funny. Card of Fate is kind of a similar card. 2-for-1 Team is a very funny monster card. We have a player in the Discord that loves playing that card, and it's hilarious every time it lands. Sales Pitch is a cool card. It's basically just a tutor for whenever your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand. You get to look through your deck for any card you want and add it to your hand. There's actually a group of cards that have these same characters, but Yaminabe Party is one of them. There's a bunch of cards with these same characters in them, and they all kind of do weird stuff. I would highly recommend looking into these type of cards, but this one's pretty good too. And then, because you have a pretty good idea of the types of, if you sit down for a game, there's a pretty good chance that most people are playing Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, stuff like that, right? So I've been having a lot of fun with Mermaid Outfitter. This card's very funny. I like seeing it. It's bad if you're the very first player, but there's a 25% of that chance of that happening, so you have a 75% chance of not being the first player. So more often than not, it's a good card, in my opinion. And Crossout Designator has a whole different application in Domain format. You can definitely catch people by surprise with that. Graceful Charity? Nah, dog. I'm gonna send my Graceful Charity so your Graceful Charity does nothing. It's just, things like that. Okay. That was a lot. I'm sorry I just dumped things on people, but those were the most important aspects of what I think people would benefit from the most, hearing that before they play a game. I hope people can take that information and you apply that for whatever deck they're trying to build. Get some ideas looking at other Domain format lists and just have a good time playing your first game ever, rather than building something that doesn't happen to work as well as you would like. The Discord is more than happy to help people with their deck, so you can make a post in deck lists even if you don't have a complete deck. You can just give some information about what you have and what you're looking for, be as descriptive as possible so that people can have a good idea of how to help you. It would be much appreciated. And with that, I just want to say, for anybody who stuck this out, thank you for watching. I'm really happy to see all the people learning about domain format. It's crazy, man. I joined the Discord when it had 30-ish people, and now we're hitting 1,700. It's crazy. Domain's going places. Anyway, I'm gonna end that here because I'm pretty sure this is gonna be long enough as is. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll see you around.